So welcome to everyone, and welcome to Billy as well. I'm very excited for this. This summit really I created based on the idea that my journey felt very much like one of self-rediscovery. And I think when people come to self-rediscovery, they often come to it with the idea that we're going to be fixing and changing things in the external. Yeah. And what I came to see through my journey with the principles was what I imagine most people see is that, it's actually about seeing who, or rediscovering who we always were. And actually, it's not really about fixing and changing the external, although often that does kind of happen as a result as we kind of dance in being human, I call it now. So this summit's really about seeing who we are, deeper in our wisdom, and then unraveling a life that we love from there. So we've heard from lots of different speakers, a bit like your own amazing creation that you've been doing with your Facebook Lives. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, because I'd love to hear kind of about how you created that as well. We've just been exploring a range of topics with obviously the same wisdom behind all of it. So it's kind of a lot of fun, and we're live most Fridays, and it's a lot of fun to have these conversations, as you know. So and then we just hang out in between in the Self-Rediscovery Facebook community. So I'm sure you're familiar with all of that.
I am indeed.
And what I'll do is I'll just do a little bit of an intro for you, because I liked your bio. So we kind of firstly I'll formally introduce you, and then we'll go into a little bit more of a human conversation.
For sure. Far away.
But I love that you're here, because particularly when I got chatting to you, we met at 3P UK as well, didn't we? Mm-hmm. And then we'd already got a conversation lined up, so that was almost wisdom in action. We got put in the same chat room. And when we were chatting, there was just this kind of feeling of you celebrating all of life regardless. So that's why we kind of talked about theming it on celebrating life. So that's and that life is a gift to be embraced. So I'm excited to kind of dive into your story and how you came to that. But also what I love about you is that you're kind of so beautifully human and down to earth, and also hilarious as well. So, but you've also got a heart of gold. So
thank you.
So I'm excited to hear more. But your bio is that you are father, husband, entrepreneur, business owner, coach, blogger, soon to be author, and all-round lover of life. People have always been your passion. You've spent the last 10 years dedicated to understanding what it really means to enjoy our lives, creating what it is that reflects our joy. It was a desire to create a great working environment that led you to study the psychology of us all, what makes us tick. And in that search, you discovered the 3 principles, and life was never again the same, like many of us. All the questions you had about your business turned out to be questions about life. And the answer was that we're all human beings first, and regardless of position, life happens for all of us. We all face challenges. The answers to a real and lasting quality of life are exactly the same for everyone. Everyone has the innate built-in capacity to create that life of real change into something deeply rewarding, and the answer is really easy. So, going from there, we'll start with the easy one. What's the secret to life?
So 30 seconds and I'm out of here then.
Exactly. Yeah, we just... No, I'm only joking. What I normally do is just kind of invite people to share a bit of their own personal journey. But of course, if you want to throw in the secret to life as well, then you're very welcome.
Well, okay. So I'll start with the secret of life.
Okay.
And that's really simple. It's to live it.
Yeah, I love that.
It is to live it. Okay. And I'm happy to tell my backstory. But I if it's okay, I would like to throw this particular frame that you've brought it up, okay? Yeah. The secret to life. What became very apparent to me in recent months, really clear to me, is that we spend a lifetime looking for purpose and meaning and understanding and what's my purpose now? What am I supposed to do? What's my purpose? But actually, your purpose in life is to know joy.
Yeah.
Is to know joy, and from that, rather than going looking from it, to grow from it. Okay. Now, that's coming at a time from the backstory.
Yeah. What I love about that is it's kind of like backwards to what we're taught, isn't it? It's like
it's backwards.
Yeah. When we get X, Y, Z, we'll be happy. That's kind of what we're.
And it's one of those. I'm literally just a few minutes ago off a call with a coach in San Francisco, and I'm in the process of having to untangle that particular training that he had himself, about, there's a place for goals, there's a place for SMART goals, there's a place for all of it. There's absolutely a place for all of that. There's wisdom in all of it as a process, but not as a life. Two different things completely.
Ooh.
So the project of Nicole, setting up the self-rediscovery, etc., that requires process. It requires a goal. It requires, timing. What's the aim of this project? What do I want to deliver with this, etc., 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 etc. All really important, but not as a life.
Yeah.
And there is no goals to life. Life is genuinely about living it.
And I think what I find as well is that the more we live life, the more that we create anyway, in a way.
Byproduct.
Yeah.
It's the byproduct of it.
Yeah.
I found, let's roll back a small bit. Maybe I'll just do the intro and just because it's kind of, it's in here. So let's just deposit it.
Yeah.
But so my history of the principles is about 10 years old, maybe less than 10 years old, but it's just a story. This is all it is now in my life. But I had some events when I was much younger that left a very deep and profound traumatic experience post these events, with severe violence, from people in your life. In my case, it was a teacher at my primary level, and then it was a guy at boarding school in my second level. And there was extreme violence on both occasions. And as a young guy, it left its mark. And by the time I was 15, 16, I was a heavy drinker. I had all the residual problems out of it because it brought me out of myself, and I was gregarious and hale, good fellow, well met. So the more I drank, the happier I became. There's your misunderstanding loud and clear. But that led to a life of that. But the problem is that as you know that when we're dealing with these problems, dealing with these misunderstandings, we need more drink because the last, it's one drink this week, it's 2 drinks next week, it's 50 drinks at the end of the year, because we're still requiring more now to distract, because that stuff kept surfacing. So it led to a life of severe anxieties. On the outside, very open, very gregarious, but on the underneath, just crushed, and I was really struggling to get by in every shape, in every sense of the word. And I hired a coach, and he's my coach again. And we've got a very close relationship. And he's the guy that introduced me to the principles first. And I hired him originally to help me with my business. And about 1.5 years into that relationship, 2 years into that relationship, he said, really, Bill, he said, the help that you need is not the help that I can give you. Because it became apparent that I was trying to use the business to fix myself.
Yeah.
All right. And it became that clear to him. Now, it didn't to me. And we laugh when I describe it on a regular basis that he used to call me Alice, because if I had fallen out with my wife or something would have happened, I was off to Wonderland for 3, maybe 4 months. I could be in a black place like for that length of time. So he'd have to haul my ass out of it then, So this was what was happening. And so one evening he said to me, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not just doing this anymore. I'm not going with you to that place. And that was a little bit of a wake-up call. That was perhaps around the time things started to shift in. And then, like I said, I had this really bad car accident, but it was the profundity of what happened in the acceptance of my death. Literally, I used words, but it was just an experience. Can
you dive into that, because you talked about that when you were sharing with me, because you had this car accident and it was this near-death experience. So I just sort of wonder if it's worth.
But is it that? I don't know, Nicole. But yeah, to put a language on it, certainly.
Yeah.
But what happened was that for a while I had to describe it as an out-of-body experience. I just didn't know how to describe it. But there is an absoluteness in the moment of a total acceptance.
Mm.
an absoluteness in it, of complete silence, of complete neutrality. I didn't have any of this, my life rolling in front of me, none of that.
Yeah.
It was, and I put the language on it because it's the only way to describe it. This is it. This is how I'm dying. I'm dying in a car accident,
Mm.
as if I'll have 2 sugars with die.
Yeah.
It was that mundane in
Yeah.
that sense, but it was the absolute neutrality of it, the
Wow.
complete silence,
Mm.
and just that was it. It was literally a completeness of it. So
Mm.
when I woke up, I had head-on collision with a bus, and when I woke up inside in the car, I was more surprised than anything that I was still alive.
Yeah.
I genuinely was really surprised that I was still alive. And I remember coming out of the accident, and I remember writing down in a journal, if everything I believed before the accident was a lie, then everything after the accident must also be a lie, because he would have died with me.
Wow.
All
That's
right. No,
yeah.
yeah. So I didn't at that moment understand that I had seen through the nature of thought and
Yeah.
belief. I didn't realize it. And considering my back history, I'm like Simon at this stage didn't have this type of a spiritual understanding. We didn't realize, and I didn't realize that something profoundly spiritual had happened.
Mm.
And I suppose, given a week or 10 days later, and the shock had worn off, and and whatever, I started to think my whole life was a lie.
Mm.
So then it all became a lie, and back to Wonderland. So I went into a very deep funk then after that,
Mm.
and stayed there. And then my brother-in-law got sick, and I began to realize he's actually one age to me. He would have passed just to the same age as I am now. And I love this man, but I always felt he never lived the life that he wanted to live, because he
Mm.
was also nervous about things, and tense and worried. And he never really valued the quality of who he was in this life. And like, was just, I couldn't make sense of it. So kind of somewhere in there, something happened. And I remember saying to Simon, look, whatever it is, I need to find an answer to this. It's time for me to start exploring this. So I did NLP and did all of this type of stuff. And I would come back and say, well, how'd you get on? I'd say, it's everything but.
Mm.
It's still, there was something about it.
Mm.
There was something about it. And so he had come across what Jamie Smart Audio. And it's the moment he heard it, this is Jamie's first stab at the principles. The moment he heard what Jamie was talking about, it landed in a huge way with Simon. Instantaneously, he got the whole thing. He just understood it,
Mm.
pristine. And he sent me the audio, and I was listening to it, and he was laughing. And I said, yeah, oh yeah, okay, I listened to it. And I checked in with him after the weekend, and he says, well, I said, yeah, it's all about your thinking. So we know that. We did that with NLP, whatever. And he goes, no, back you go. So he made me listen to it again and again and again. So by the time I listened to it the fourth time, I had enough now, and things were getting tense. So I said, no, I'm not doing that anymore now, Simon. I just will let it be. And he was laughing now, and he was really starting to get upset now, because he was laughing all the time, because it had landed with him. Now, he's a coach of many years' experience, but he said this was the piece that he knew about but didn't understand, but he put everything together, put
Yeah.
all his work together.
Mm.
And
that's why I guess we call it the missing link as well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I set it aside, and would you believe, today I was discussing this very thing with my nephew. We were actually talking about it, because I went to do his partner's hair, and their baby was there. The three of us and the four of us were there. We were having a wonderful chat, and we got. She asked, because she was asking me about this and what I was doing, and I was telling her that it was around the time of the first Gerald's first anniversary, and Jordan my sister had asked me, would I check in with Mikey? And at the time, we were minding my mum, and we all had taken a turn at this stage. She was in her late 80s, and dementia was setting in. And Thursday evening was my evening.
Mm.
So my two nephews were living in the house next door after the family had moved out to the house, out in the country to their house. And so the two nephews were living in the house, partying, And so on a Thursday night, I'd put Mum to bed. She'd have had her, she'd had her medication, and she'd have settled down. And I'd sneak next door to the boys then for a few cans, and we'd hang out and chat. So we had a wonderful time. It was a wonderful couple of years with them. But one evening, myself and Mikey are sitting there, and we started talking, and he started to tell me a story, and just in the age, like that. I could see him putting his whole life together.
Mm.
It landed with me like that, oh my God, he thinks he must do this to do this, and he thinks he must do this to do this, and he thinks, and this is the kind of guy that I am, so I must do it this way. And I could see it, and I was going, holy shit, he's making it all up.
Yeah. So you saw it in
Holy
someone
shit.
else first. That's
Yeah, I saw it in someone else first, you know. It just made sense that I could see it in him, Nicole. And we were laughing about it because he has recollections of it. Because I remember, I really have no idea what I said to him in that conversation. But we were laughing about it today. He said, I remember part of it. And he said, I had to tell you to shut up. Because it was just, he said, my brain couldn't take any more. It just couldn't take any more. And the following morning, I picked up the phone and I rang Jamie Smart's office and I spoke to Nikki. And without any idea of how to pay for it, without any idea of anything, without even discussing it with my wife and my family and the money that was going to cost and the time it was going to take, and we're in the depth of this financial meltdown in the world, I just knew I'd heard something. I just knew it. I said, this is it. And that's what began my journey into the principles. But part of when we're talking about the innateness of wisdom, you know, all of my life I've been in business, and all of my life being in business has been about building relationships with my staff. So staff never left. So like, only when they got married or they'd moved away, or something big in their own lives,
Yeah.
that happened, would they leave. But like lots of people work for me 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 years. We developed it because it was always about that. And to me, the way I looked at it, if I'm going to spend this time with people, I may as well be with people I love to work with and love to be with.
Yeah.
So it was the thing that I looked for in the interview, was that sense of connection. Now, I didn't know at the time this is what now that I have the language to explain it, but this was the innateness of this. And this is the point that anybody that's listening to this, when you're talking about self-rediscovery, this is already at play. You may not have the language for it, but this is already at play.
Yeah.
And I was guided by that. And so my relationships were built around that, Nicole. And so this was always a wonderful working environment and very productive and so on and so forth until the last couple of years or whatever. And that's what kind of, that's what kind of brought me, and lots of stuff then started to go, oh yeah. And I could start to see how I was fitting stuff together. And that's kind of what brought me, that's my history to it, of being in business, being self-employed, the backstory of alcoholism, and not much alcoholism, but substance abuse, as post-trauma or whatever, and all of those stories. And they played out for a long time in my life. And there was one or two very dark moments where I didn't think I would make the morning. I did have two of those nights of the long dark night of the soul. I had two of them where I had, I think I just can't do this anymore. And they can be quite dark, but again, back to the point that at all times we're being held.
Yeah.
And something stopped me from whatever it was, because I don't know what it was, but I obviously never saw it through. But now that I look back, now that I understand it, I go, oh yeah, right. And those moments unfold. We're always being held.
Yeah.
Even when we don't know it.
Yeah. So would you say your first glimpse of that was that kind of car accident, or?
No.
No.
I think he coalesced it, into something very tangible. But no, the answer would have been no. And I think anybody I think when we all slow down enough, there are moments in our life that, something is kind of, oh my.
Yeah.
You've no idea what it happens. You can consider it this ginormous coincidence, or we struggle to try, but no, our lives are littered with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's such a good point, actually, because we're so often, like, wisdom is always there and we've always had access to it and we've always had those glimpses, like you say, but we kind of just dismiss them as if, oh, well, that's just a coincidence.
But is it?
Yeah.
but is it? You know, and I don't see it that way
No,
anymore.
no, me either. And I think it's kind of about, we talk about deep listening a lot, don't we, in the principles? And I think really that's what we're kind of listening for. That's how it feels to me. It's like listening to where wisdom is playing out in our lives and just having eyes for it. And the more we stop to notice it, the more we see how visible it is all the time, really.
Yeah, but you see, this one of these coaches that I'm working with in America, and we were having a chat with the other day, and he was saying to me, he said, "Well, he says, what does love sound like to you? What does, you know?" And I go, "Really gentle." And he says, "What do you mean by really gentle?" He has this real dynamic sense about him. He's a wonderful guy. And I say, you know, for years it was banging away in the back of my head, banging away in the back of my head, and I couldn't hear it, and it had to make more noise all the time, but I wasn't listening to it, and I wasn't attuned to it. And I said, right now it's very gentle because I hear it all the time. It doesn't need to be anything. It's just gentle.
Yeah,
It's really gentle.
that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it falls away. You know, I can see, you know, there are times when we have those insights, and then people will, when they're hearing, you know, and when they're talking or listening to this, they'll recognize those little moments where something really has just shifted or slipped through, you know, or they've had a in the middle of something. I mean, that's wisdom has been banging away at the back of your head. Fucking listen to me. Listen to me. And then somehow it breaks through and we hear it. And we are kind of moved to do something that kind of, I knew what I had to do in that moment. It kind of can often show up like that, or that moment of inspiration or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but that's there all the time. That's there all the time. That does, because it's not even a dare thing. Now that I'm using the language to say it, but it's not even a dare thing. It's who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not even the presence of it. We are the presence of it.
Yeah.
We are the presence of it.
So how does that relate to joy then? Because you said the secret of life is joy.
Is joy. You know, I mean, you alluded to the, you know, to earlier on about creativity and about joy, you know, about happiness and what's the secret and whatever. Well, if you're pissed off, life is hard.
That's true.
You know, if you're pissed off, life is hard. You know, when you're happy and the sense of joy, you're coming from a sense of joy, you breeze through. And this is what struck me in all of this, was that the more I allowed myself to be free of my own expectations, the clearer it became to me that what I was being moved by, what I thought was my expectations, was really just a reaction to thinking, reaction to a subtle version of, if I have this now, I'm going to be really happy. If I do this, I'm going to be really happy. Except just a different version of the same story playing out all the time.
Yeah.
And then I began to, it started to unfold, especially during the last 6 months in particular. I began to realize, well, as you know, if I'm happy, you know, and it's joyful, everything else becomes a product or a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Because it's an expression of joy now, that whether or not it's in my life, who I am fundamentally is joy. Who I am fundamentally is love. We just swap the words out.
I was going to talk about labels quite a lot, because I think we all have our different language, like you've kind of pointed to.
Yes.
So I love that the kind of both of those labels are who we are. It's like we're anything that we decide to be, really.
Because it becomes an expression, you know, and like when you describe it as self-rediscovery, and I love, because I see it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
For my languages, it's about becoming you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this, as I get on one of my little soapbox moments here about this, and it shows up in areas, particularly more with men, in the area of dating and all of that, and the machismo nature of it. whereas it shows up in women in their presentation about weight and hair and clothes, and and it looks facetious and stuff, but it's not. There's something fundamentally deeper in all of that, that's going on. And it's back again to that this will make you happy. So let's create a brand new you. If you're this person, I guarantee you'll be happy. If you're that, you only need to be this person. So let's envision this, and let's, who would you like to be? What ideal person would you like to be? And yada, 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 yada. But fuck it. What's wrong with being you? All right. Sorry, I can't. I'm on my phone because my son nicked my laptop. So I don't know how many people are listening there, but I might as well tell you that I'm inclined to drop the F-bomb in the middle of conversations. But it becomes, the story is about becoming you.
Yeah.
Without the stories. So what you and I are both pointing to is exactly the same thing in a different language, perhaps just a point. But the spirit of what we're talking about is exactly the same thing. Who are you without the story?
Yeah. And I think for me, it's important for people to see that that's who they've always been as well. It's just that
That's
we
the
have
point.
these layers of thinking that stops us from seeing it, I guess.
All the time. And it becomes, it becomes easier over time. This old stay in the conversation thing that would often people will talk about or whatever. It is a little bit distracting in the sense that if I was to see, if my understanding of it is stay with it, because there are going to be times where the universe is going to challenge you, God is going to challenge you, love is going to challenge you to burn off, to just to allow it to go. But sometimes we don't even know it's at play until it shows up, and it can be really painful. It can be really painful, the recognition of a story that we were sure was us, that we were assured of our identity because of it and stuff.
Because we're human. I talk about this quite a lot. It's like, well, yes, we can understand this as much as we like, but also Sid was kind of always pointing back to the idea that we're ordinary and we're human, and so we have these experiences of life because we think, and every thought is a gift. So I very much feel like all of these experiences that we have as a human, while sometimes they're not always ones that we necessarily desire, they're kind of like, it's kind of like we can learn to be okay with all of it, and there's kind of a richness, it feels to me. So I wondered your take on that, given that we're talking about celebrating all of life.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the underpinning of life. You're talking about what underpins everything.
Yeah.
And there are, as we were Sidisms, show up in the, and one of the more popular Sidisms is that if the only thing in life that you were afraid of was your experience, you'd be okay. I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but that this is, in other words, don't be afraid of your experience, don't be afraid of what's unfolding, because what people tend to forget is that we're designed incredibly well to experience every feeling.
Yeah.
Because if you're feeling it, you have been designed to feel it. So, so it's within your range all of the time. And one of the things that made it so wonderfully ordinary for me was this, when Sid was asked, do you get angry? And Sid goes, well, yes, I get angry. And what do you do when you get angry? I get angry. How perfectly ordinary.
Yeah.
Because within the experience of life, this is the richness that I would interpret it as this. You're supposed to understand that this is part of the richness of life.
Yeah.
That is, you're allowed to experience it fully without being afraid of it.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is, if everyone was kind of walking around in a state of bliss all the time, life would be a little bit boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And actually, now that you're saying that, this was the origins of this conversation. As far as I remember, we were talking about, the Black Lives Matter thing that had come up and stuff.
Mm.
And to me, Bill Pettit, at the end of the conference, like, which profoundly moved me, because it made a lot of sense to me, about his discussion with George, and how George said there was never a time where he didn't wake up in the morning and wonder what issue his skin color would raise today.
Mm.
And Bill said, I'm 78 years of age, and I've never had a morning where I've woken up and wondered what issue my skin color is going to bring today.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the end point, when every human being can wake up in the morning and not have that question.
Yeah.
That's white privilege,
Yeah.
where it's not an issue to us, but to a vast segment of our fellow human beings, it is an issue. And I cannot for the life of me, and I said this to you, why there is this insistence in the homogenizing of humanity.
Mm.
Because each of us are a unique expression of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what creed you are. It doesn't matter what sexuality you are. It doesn't matter. You are a unique expression of
Yeah.
God, of oneness, of the light, of the universe, whatever language you want to put. Let's not get hung up in the language. But that's the celebration.
Yeah.
We can celebrate being so unbelievably different and joyous. Look at what Black culture brought to the world.
Mm.
The music, the food, the dance, the traditions, the deep spirituality of the Black community, whether it's gospel, whether it's, on the African plains in connection, with the profound nature of earth that
Mm.
they're connected to. That's a celebration of life. Now,
Yeah.
why do we want to get rid of that?
Mm.
Why do we want to homogenize humanity into a blandness? The Chinese culture, the Japanese culture, the American culture, whatever. We are a unique expression within our community of that. And that's what makes life so unbelievably interesting
Yeah.
as an experience. And we're supposed to experience the richness of it. We're supposed to experience the vastness of it. And
Yeah.
I think to me, it's about that celebration.
Yeah.
That, yeah, you look different, you sound different, you play different music, you eat different food. I'd like to try that too.
Yeah.
But that's where it's at.
Yeah, and
That's where it's
what
at.
comes to mind is I can't remember where this quote came from, but I remember someone saying wisdom is universal and form is personal. And it's like without the personal form of stuff is, you can't celebrate life.
But so what's the point? You
Yeah.
see, what is this desire to homogenize humanity?
Mm.
When we understand that each of us are a unique expression of that, now that makes the difference.
Mm.
Because when a person shows up, whatever the color of fundamentally spiritually, we're of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And through that stuff, that uniqueness that is Nicole Barton, that uniqueness that is Billy Mann, the uniqueness that is Sid Banks, that uniqueness that is Martin Luther King, or Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or whatever color. I know I'm using big names because they're the names that are coming to my head. But the ordinariness of your neighbor, whose
Yeah.
origins are Pakistani, or the origins of your neighbor who's Irish, or the origins of your neighbor who's West Indian or African or something, are each a unique expression of their environment.
Mm.
That's it. And there's nothing to fear in that.
Yeah. And
And
everything to celebrate.
and every that's the point I'm coming to. So in the absence of that, what we're left with, then, Nicole, is something that we can really celebrate.
Mm.
Is just how insanely creative we are, that we can create a world of such diversity,
Yeah.
such richness, such beauty. And the only thing that gets in our way is how we think about it.
Mm.
That somehow we run a judgment rule over it. And we're missing a glorious opportunity in our life to be happy and to see this as a unique gift, as a
Yeah.
unique gift to humanity, that we can be so diverse and same at the same time.
So what takes us out of the suffering that we can have about this kind of idea of separation and puts us back into joy? And I'm just playing devil's advocate here because
No, it's a good, no, it's a good question, and I'm just pondering it. If I'm asked any question in relation to that, I think I give the same answer all the time. It's just an understanding.
yeah.
It's the answer is always in understanding.
Mm.
And for me, when I heard Bill Pettit talking about this and the way he framed it up, I felt that I wasn't listening.
Mm.
I really wasn't listening to what I was being told. So it was time for me to shut the fuck up and listen to what I had been told, and to listen to what they spoke about, institutionalized racism and all of that, and listen and understand what's being said, and allow that understanding to inform where I wasn't seeing it. And the joy of, see, it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
It's okay to misunderstand it. It's okay to go, what, you got that one upside down, didn't I? You know, because when it's upside down, or when we're stuck like that, or we're in that, that means that we have innocently, or however we've managed to, through the conditioning of society, or through our exposure to our own communities, without ever expanding into the world, we'll say, and to accept other cultures. It's just a byproduct of that misunderstanding.
Yeah. So I guess seeing the misunderstanding and allowing the experience
Without taking it personally.
Yeah.
Without taking it personally, because we're hoovering up information for so long and collating it into Nicole and collating it into Billy, without ever realizing that all we're actually doing is gathering up stuff, hammering it together, and making it look like this.
Yeah.
And that is so unbelievably innocent, because that's how we're wired.
Yeah.
We're wired to take stuff in. The problem is when we didn't realize that all we have to do is take it in.
Yeah.
Not turn it into something else, but just take it in. And that's presence. You know, that's the access to presence, to whatever's unfolding in this moment. We're able to take it in without kind of going, turning it into something and making a big tangle about it, and you know, and with comparisons or judgments or expectations or whatever.
Yeah.
And just be able to absorb it, recognizing that our story in that, if we can see what we're interpreting, what we're making up about that moment, the closer we are to accept the moment as it is.
Yeah. And in that acceptance, I guess, is where the joy can bubble up.
But that's the point, you know. I mean, and that's when I was talking to Chip about this, you know, after our call. To me, presence is the magic key. And again, one of those misunderstandings that tends to show up during coaching and whatever, like in these conversations, is getting into the present. How will I be more present? How do I get into the present moment? And one of those insights that occurred to me was, Jesus, has somebody got a second moment that I don't know anything about? Is there this mass flipping conspiracy that nobody said, hey, hide that second moment from Billy Mann, he doesn't deserve it? You with me? There is no other moment. We are always present. Period. It's the recognition of our thinking. It's the recognition of our misunderstandings and our understandings playing out in its entirety, as opposed to being in it. We recognize it, we understand it, and presence is automatic. And in the absence of misunderstanding, who would you be?
Yeah.
In the absence of misunderstanding, who would you be? Be present. You're always going to be present. You are present. And to me, that is like the gateway to joy, is the gateway to love. Is, you know, I mean, the purpose of life is to love. You can, you know, and what people don't realize is the word joy is made up to explain a feeling. The word love is made up to explain a feeling.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
They're only words.
Yeah.
So there isn't, I have the magic formula for love. Come here, you know, this is how you're supposed to feel, you know, by my book, 422 subparagraph, you know. No, the word love is made up to describe a sense that that just opens you up to the acceptance of whatever is unfolding in front of you.
I'm just wondering there if the feeling's the same, actually. Is it just that feeling of connection?
There you go. Use the word connection.
Mm.
The purpose of life is to connect with life. You could swap it out. You know, the danger of language is that it becomes, and that famous word, you know, don't listen to my words. That famous phrase, it's not in my words. And what I understood, which took me a while, I will confess, because when I was listening to Sid's words, I was listening to them up here.
Yeah.
I was trying to make sense of Sid's words. What I wasn't doing at the time was I wasn't listening to what I was hearing about Sid's words.
Mm.
And when he was talking about things, what was I seeing about myself? What was it opening up in me?
Yeah.
What was I becoming aware of?
And that's what I think is, I often refer to it as kind of finding our own truth with it, because it's like we just need to see our own labels for it, or hear our own labels for it, really.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's it. You know, I wish, sorry, Patrick Drury put a message there, I think, and he kind of blocked your face in me. Sorry, Patrick. Yeah, I agree with you. It is about that. It is a really genuinely heartfelt about making it simpler than you think it is.
Yeah.
All the time. Simpler that. No, go simpler again. And essentially we're falling back into, this is another way of describing, we're falling back into the feeling. Into the feeling.
Yeah.
You know, and this is why I would always, when I have these conversations, I will have a conversation around words.
Yeah.
You know, at some stage, you know, what does love mean to you?
Yeah.
And you're pulling, you know, we're all doing it, and it means this. I said, well, what if it was just a feeling? What if it was just a word to explain a feeling of expansiveness, a feeling of openness, a feeling of space?
Yeah.
What if love was just 4 letters that got put together to describe that?
Yeah.
A feeling.
Yeah, and I do the same in my foundations program. Actually, it's I have a whole module on this. It's like,
Yes.
well, what's your language? What's your label for it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And again, like, as part of that, I would always say, I don't allow any principal speak during my coaching sessions at all. I don't allow therapy speak. I don't allow coaching speak. I just, because it creates a secondary narrative.
Yeah, it's almost like another place to get sometimes. It's like, well,
yeah.
when am I going to get the principles and fully know them?
I mean, like, this is where this language tends to come out, you know, the way I speak, because this is me speaking. This is me without having to, oh God, I hope I sound smart in front of Nicole now, you know, or that I have, you know, that when I'm talking to people that I'm going to sound wise. I'm going to be wise now, and I need to sound wise. You know, that's another narrative.
Yeah.
And like I was saying to you earlier on, to me, like, part of the conversations and how we set up the structure of the conversations when I was running them was, whatever is active and whatever is live, whatever is showing up as, you know, the creation, your life, work, whatever it is that's showing up in that right now as a burst of creativity, regardless of how you describe it, is what's fueling the insights and stuff. And that's what I love. That's what I love. That's what I love to hear. Because that's that moment when it's really flowing through us all. And it might be the most mundane things. It doesn't matter. But if it's from a place of joy, and what you're seeing to be true, and how you've seen through your own misunderstandings just right now, is beautiful. You can hear it in the voice. You can sense it off the person.
Yeah.
That it's just coming through.
That's gorgeous.
And I love that. Really love that.
I'm just wondering if at this point anybody has any questions, because sometimes we offer it out to questions, if that's okay with you. I don't know if anybody does, but if anybody wants to come on, then you're very welcome to either pop a question in the chat box or raise your hand, or I don't know if we've got anybody at the moment. But although we did have a group chat, Patrick said, "I wish Zoom had a heart emoji."
Yeah. He showed, I know, because he showed up in front of me there, and yeah, because I won the phone and it disappeared in me.
Oh, I can't remember which bit that was to now. I wish I could. I wish I could remember. Yeah, so it doesn't look like we've got any questions at the moment. But if anybody does, then you're welcome to kind of unmute yourselves or raise a hand or whatever you want to do. Pop it in the group chat if you don't want to come on live.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, while people are mulling through this,
Yeah.
you did mention the word about creativity. You did
Yeah.
say, you know, where is the source of creativity in all of this? But what happens if you're not getting in the way?
Mm.
What happens if it's simpler than that? What happens if it becomes the natural extension, the natural expression?
Yeah.
You know, the understanding of the word creativity is, again, back to letters, back to words, and then back to the concept that I must be creative. So now I must sit down and create something. And it feels forced and it feels off,
Yeah.
you know, because it doesn't matter what you are bringing to life. You know, it's your expression of it.
Yeah.
And whether it's a small thing or it's a massive thing and impacts millions of people, or it's just a piece of art, or it's just a moment of doing something for somebody.
Mm.
I know if I do that now, that's creativity.
Yeah. It's all creativity, I think. You
It's
know,
all
we're
creativity. Yeah.
constantly creating our experience. I remember someone that came on, I think, who was it? Someone came on talking about alcohol. I think it was Jason, actually, Jason Shears. He was
Just
talking
cheers.
about how even, you know, his use of alcohol was creative. You know, we're always creating our experience. And
Yep.
yeah, it's kind of something we can't really get away from. We're always creating.
Well, you see, we're back to what I said earlier on, that Nicole is cobbled together
Yeah.
from all of this stuff that we pull into from the universe. Billy is the same. Every person is the same. We have, or we are created
Mm. Mm.
as a unique expression. We ourselves are the expression of creativity, the expression of creation.
Mm.
So, like you say, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. That it's an unstoppable force
Mm.
all of the time, because it has to be. Because wow, we've created this, like,
Mm.
you know, and even if it's a shit experience, no, it's still creative.
Exactly, it's true.
You know, it's still creative.
Yeah.
And you know, the release of that, you know, it takes all that pressure off.
Mm.
And one of my favorite questions that I have when I'm working with people, and we run into these, oh, I'm blocked, or I'm, you know, or whatever, you know, who would you be without that thought?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would you be
Hard
without that thought?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
Who
just
would you
curious
be?
because you talked about how you kind of saw all of this from kind of trying to make sense of your business. So
Mhm.
how did that kind of play out in your business?
Um, that's the irony. I was really, you know, through the downturn and all of that, and then when I came into the principles around like 2012, etc., and the business was growing. But at that stage, this was starting to happen as well. You know, I mean, the separation had begun without my realizing it at the time, because I was still in fix-it mode.
Mm.
I needed a rest. I was shattered.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I had like 30 something years of this now at this stage,
Mm.
35, 47. And when I came back, the release and the relief of the principles, you know, because I was starting to feel just a bit more at peace with my life.
Mm.
I just wanted more of that
Yeah.
at the time. But what I hadn't realized is my journey was already down. This where I am right now was already in play at that stage. And so the business was growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And then I had invested in the business. And I'll bring you up to date to where we are now, because it leads to where we are now. It isn't
Mm.
just one standalone event. There's a synchronous run to it. And I'd agreed with the landlord to invest in the property and to expand the business and whatever. And we got to go ahead and everything was fine. And I invested this wagon of money in it. For a month afterwards, for the landlord to come back and say to me that what my plan was still would be impossible to institute legally. And I was after seeking legal advice on this.
Mm.
You with me? So I just don't, I couldn't. I was so broken after he had put the brakes on all the work that I had done, and I had a lot of money that I had saved up to invest in on growing and expanding my business to the next phase and whatever. So I began that. I began a slight downward turn. And what had happened was then, with all of that, I was getting sick as well.
Yeah.
And I had an underlying bladder infection that I didn't know anything about. I know, looking back, the telltale signs, like I was getting up twice and three times a night to go to the toilet, and I was thinking, 50s, maybe it's that, you know what I mean, or whatever. And considering what I put myself through, maybe it is part of the abuse I gave my body down through the years.
So was this
But
before the principles? So you were...
No, this is in the last couple of years. I'm trying to say to you, is that, like, that's what I'm saying to you. When the principles arrived into my life,
Yeah.
like, the business really started to grow and it was flying, and you with me, and like, we were, working, we were finding more efficient ways to work together. The communication was very free. And one of the things that I learned while I was in the salon at the time, when I didn't have the principles understanding of it at the time, was the fact that I found that when I worked with my staff and I explained to them the difference between a professional conversation and a personal conversation, I didn't realize at the time that I was saying, when we sit down to discuss an issue in the salon, and I'd screw up or somebody would screw up in the salon or whatever, and we'd sit down to analyze it. This isn't saying you're a shit human being.
Mm.
This has nothing to do with you in the world. This has nothing to do with you as a bad person. Or there's no judgment in this whatsoever. Something went wrong. We need to figure out what went wrong. This is a professional conversation.
Mm.
A personal conversation is if we say that you're useless, you're this, you're the idea, and so you make it personal.
Yeah.
And we started to see, the difference between personal and impersonal.
Yeah, gorgeous.
At that level, and that started to innately start to work its way through the business.
Yeah.
So it also allowed me to step back, because now I didn't have to do it all myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it allowed them to be expressed and be great at what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, maybe it's my job to support them.
Mm.
And that was how the shift started. And that was how the business started to really grow. And then the next step was then to expand, to invest and expand. And it was going that way. But as life would have it, that was the first. And then I got sick, Nicole. And then, like, at the end of 18, I spent time in hospital. And then I came home and I worked, like the consultant said, under no circumstances was to go to work.
Mm.
Well, it was December. What was I going to do? He didn't want me anywhere near work.
Mm.
Go to work, kill myself working for December, find myself on a flight going on holidays on the 4th of January in 2019 and almost dying in the flight. And spent my holiday with the doctors in Fuerteventura, all right, and missed the next couple of months of work. To come back to work then to find a whole tax storm unfolding in me last year. Because the rules had changed and how they were assessing businesses had changed and how reporting their staff and their wages and works. And for a small business, the workload was enormous. So my accountant had taken up the slack. So my accountancy fees agreed, my tax had gone up by 50%. So the whole lot was starting to, and it wasn't great. And then when it came to Christmas this year, and I remember talking, myself and Simon were laughing about this only a couple of weeks ago, something really moved within me when I began to realize that I have been out of sync in here for a while and I have not been listening.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I kind of I thought I knew, but I was afraid to even look at it.
Yeah.
I was afraid to even look at it at the time. But something had shifted, really deeply. And I said to Simon one evening around Christmas, and I said to Simon, I said, whatever 2020 is going to bring me, Simon, I'm open to the full experience of it now.
Yeah.
I'm open to the change. I'm open to whatever is being asked of me.
Mm.
I'm open to whatever is being asked of me.
And it's been big change, hasn't it?
And it's been enormous. It
Yeah.
has been enormous. And so along, I had a very profound month of February, spiritually profound month of February, because a lot happened in that, with a letter that was written 10 years ago by my mother that was given to me that had got lost in her papers.
Oh.
And I've often described it as the silent conversations I had with my mother.
Oh.
I didn't get up with my mother for decades. And then we were reminding her, and then I was into principles. I'd started to come across them, and then one evening I realized, wait a second, she's not just my mother, she's a woman by herself, by
Mm.
her own right. And I began to see my mother in an entirely different light. And
Yeah.
then I began to really understand what it means that everybody is doing their best. And from a fraught, what the fuck am I doing here, minding my mother position, to being insanely in love with this woman over the next 4 to 5 years. We
Mm.
fell madly deeply in love,
Oh.
madly deeply in love. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, I was so grateful for it, because I started to have these conversations with my mother, even though she wasn't speaking to me,
Mm.
as in because of her age and whatever, and she wouldn't have been able to grasp the nature of the conversation. I was having the conversation.
Yeah.
And I had found my peace because I began to see what my mother was doing was, even I misunderstood it myself, but she also misunderstood it. And she was fighting her own demons at the time.
Yeah.
And she was still trying to protect me. And I didn't realize at the time that's what she was trying to do. I felt rejected.
Oh.
And as a small boy, I created the rest of the story then from there on out.
Yeah.
And so this letter appears in February. And so she did 4 years, and she was at least 5 years before that, because she wouldn't have been able to write for the last number of years
Mm.
to put a letter together like that. And the very thing that we had fallen out, that had been a major bone of contention between me and my mother, she had written apology to me.
Oh.
And then it had got lost in her papers and showed up in February this
Oh,
year,
how
the
good.
week of her 4th anniversary.
Wow.
All right. And so then 2 weeks after that, we were processing more of her estate. And there was a letter sort of like, Bill gets this and Thomas gets this, and these little trinkets and stuff that had value to her.
Mm.
And she thought, well, he'd love that, and I'm going to give him that. And what showed up in that was my father's obituary.
Mm.
That jar hadn't been opened in 28 years.
Wow.
And when it got opened, my father's obituary was inside it. So somebody had taken it out of that paper 28 years ago, put it in the jar, sealed the jar, and the jar was never opened. So I got my mother's letter Valentine's week. And
Oh.
2 weeks after that, I got my father's obituary. And
Oh.
somehow there was a shift in my, I don't know, and I don't profess to know any of that, nor do I go into that as a rule, but I felt a profound settling
Mm.
within me,
Mm.
of a peace. And I remember saying that, oh my, they've just told me that they're okay, that they're happy, that they were telling me, this is their way of reaching out to me to tell me that everything is good
Mm.
and that I'm good. And whatever shows up, it's going to be okay. And 3 weeks after that, my salon closed.
Yeah. Wow. That's a beautiful
And
story.
I arrived into that with a real sense of peace.
Yeah.
And everything that you see and all the lies and all the impact of everything that I've been doing since then is from that place of joy,
Yeah.
from that place of peace, that place of being okay.
Mm.
That I don't need it in my life, but this is an expression of just the sheer joy of doing this, the love of connecting with human beings, the love of my Thursdays are given to just doing free calls with people and stuff, because I know that I have the time. I want to be able to do that. I don't know if it'll be like that for however long, but while I can do it, I'm doing it.
And what I love about that is the kind of sense of, you it feels like you're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen next, but it doesn't matter because I'm held, and that experience has really helped solidify, I
Well,
guess.
the only way that I could codify this, Nicole, is this, and because the intellect will want to codify it,
Yeah.
is the fact that I saw my well-being. I saw what it meant to be well,
Mm.
to be guided by that sense within myself of being of joy, of being okay, of being of love,
Mm.
and being guided by that and surrendering to that. And the steps that I took and the steps of I surrender now because I feel uncomfortable and I want temporary relief. Because that's kind of the misunderstanding of when people surrender.
Yeah.
Oh, no. When we're talking about surrender, we're talking about, okay, it's whatever it is, however life is unfolding, whatever's happening, I am guided by whatever that reflection of wisdom is in my life right now, that reflection of love, whatever, to allows me to inform me, I allow it to let me, to navigate me through it.
Yeah, to move us. Yeah.
To move us. And that's surrender. And that took the form of me closing my business.
Yeah.
And walking away from it after 28 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's so powerful. And I'm
You
excited.
know,
I'm excited.
me too, you know, and I look, I don't know, Nicole, where this is going. You know, I don't know, because it has thrown up the most extraordinary surprises to me already.
Yeah.
It has thrown up the most extraordinary, and I have had the most extraordinary conversations. I have made amazing connections, people that I dreamt of talking to and connecting with, and suddenly they're in my world, and you know, and everything has just got so expanded.
It sounds like you're having a lot of fun as well.
It's good, but sure, I'm guided by it.
Yeah.
And I still haven't given up the hairdressing.
Yeah.
You know, I still do a bit of it because I have clients with me 25 and 30 years.
Yeah.
We have real relationships. And so I'll do a day a week or 2 days a week. I'll just do a couple of clients because I still love this.
Yeah.
I still just, there's something about sitting down, you know, because it's nearly all women I've been working with, you know, for the last 35 years, but working with and on, as it were. And it taught me to look at people, to really stop and look at people. It is a wonderful job with hairdressing that if you're open to any kind of spiritual inclination at all, in that sense that you're unblocked that way, there is something about looking at somebody, really seeing them. And you know, you're not just seeing the face, but like if you're doing something with their hair, it becomes about that expression of that person then. You know, I mean, you know, some people, it's pink hair, you know what I'm trying to say to you, and it's fun, and because it's a reflection of who they are. They love, you know, other people aren't like that. So what you want to do is bring that expression out of them.
I love that. I can't think of anything better than a spiritual hairdresser.
You know, it used to drive the girls nuts, all right? Because like when I will ask you, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to hear your answer. I'm not going, how are you doing? Where are you going on holidays?
Yeah.
You gum blow dry hair. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
If I'm asking you how you're doing, I really do want to hear the answer.
Yeah.
So there were days like that the girls would be furious with me, like because I'd be dragging the chair across the kitchen, across the salon into the kitchen, and I'd have to bring the client into the back because there would be tears and there would be, and it was another one of those reasons why I had to look inwards, because some of the conversations were brutal.
Yeah.
They were brutal, Nicole. You know, to see what people can, in this sense, women can suffer quietly.
Yeah.
For so long.
Transformational hairdressing. That's amazing.
You know, so I should drive the, I should screw up the book, you know, the appointment book, because sorry girls, I'd be pulling the chair across the salon and into the kitchen because and he's going to be fucking in there for at least an hour now, and he's going to be running back and he's going to not miss, and giving out to me for missing my lunch break, or I'm not taking my breaks, or I'm not looking after myself or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But shit, Nicole, if somebody's there and they've opened up, and if somebody's, you know, is expressing the pain or the anguish or the trauma in their life, like that's the other part of my job. So I'm not going to walk away from either.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly important. And like I was telling my best friend's Mann this morning, I was at her house, and we were laughing, you know, because I'd seen her for ages, because they're in their mid-70s, they've been cocooning, and just as if whenever yourself and Dee feel ready for me to call, just send me a message, because I'm not going to go to the house until you're happy with the way things are or whatever. And so I was up there. She sent me a message, you know, last week, and so I was in town. I went up to him, And we were inside, and we were laughing about the signposts of life, that wisdom is always playing out, that I just didn't hear at the time. I
Yeah.
had moved 13 years ago into a new premises. This was part of the
Mm.
growing, even right in the middle of the meltdown,
Yeah.
2007, when everything else, the shit was just going bananas all
Yeah.
over the place. I was moving into new premises. I was growing my business.
Yeah.
Despite where I was in my head,
Yeah.
something was still guiding me to go forward. So I remember having conversations inside in the salon, and I don't know what came into my head at the time, to say, if you walked into the UK version, which would be Waterstones, it's Easton's here,
Mm.
and I said, you saw my face gurning down from the bestseller list. You picked up the book, and you know what I mean, and you looked at it and you read the back of it. And you said on the back of the book, this is before I began this particular journey, I need this particular work as deliberately as I am now. And you read the blurb at the back of the book. What would be on the book? What would the book be about? And I remember distinctly asking 39 different people. I kept the mental tally of it.
Yeah.
And out of 39 people, only 2 said hairdressing.
Ah. Yeah.
Only 2 said hairdressing.
That's
The other 37 said it would be something to do with inside the head, something to do with kind of psychology or people or something.
yeah.
And this was before I began this. So without my even realizing it, my fascination
Mm.
and my working with people has always been expressing itself like this.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
so somehow in the last year, 18 months, this started to see, I couldn't, I had to listen. I wasn't
You
quite
said
sure what it was.
you were kind of you said I'm ready, I'm open for it now.
And
So
at that stage, then
yeah,
I just, whatever it was, I just knew it was time to,
yeah,
and it led me to closing my business, which is another form of creation.
yeah.
Because without, sometimes we don't realize that creation needs space.
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this with a client earlier, because I call it kind of the creative winter. And it's something I often resist because I've always been the type to kind of be doing and creating and coming up with ideas and kind of putting them into action. But actually, it is really important to kind of get quiet and really listen to what wants to come through and be expressed, like you say.
Mm. And that's it. Like making, I would see it as making space.
Yeah,
That sometimes you just need to you need to open it up. And sometimes part of that making space for whatever unfolds is that you have to let go of the old story.
yeah,
And ironically, the very reasons that kept me in business for so long turned out to be the very reasons why I left.
yeah,
They were the very reasons why I left, because I was, is this really for me? Is
mm,
this really where I felt, where I'm felt drawn to? Is this really what I want to continue for however long I've left in my working life, etc. To run a hairdressing business and all that. And every single answer was no, 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 no. Every question I asked myself about staying there,
yeah,
every answer was no.
mm,
There comes a time when you have to hear that, and you go,
yeah. And that's it can feel such a bold thing because, that's kind of the opposite of what we're taught. We need to get our ducks in a row and lined up and know what's next for us. But actually, what I see is that kind of stillness is the birthplace of what's coming next.
absolutely. It's Eileen, see you. The like it appears like an enormous decision externally,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
it has, like my wife, when we had this discussion, I was after doing one of my lives, and she came in and sat down beside me, and she said, "You're not going back to the salon. Are you absolutely 110% sure about that? That your future is in the direction of coaching?" She said, "Do you know what you're going to do?" And I said, "Look, I only have an idea, but the one thing I'm absolutely sure of is I'm never again going back.
Mm.
I have a line run underneath it. Whatever is going to show up has to show up." I said, I cannot go back to that life. It's
Yeah.
just, and she just stood up and said, "Okay." Now, to take a couple of weeks to come to terms with it, because the ramifications of this are, I have a family, I have a wife, I have a mortgage. This isn't a decision that can be taken lightly at one level.
Mm.
But there's times when decisions are just right.
Yeah.
They're just right. That it isn't a big decision. It's the right decision.
Yeah.
And it just, the moment literally the moment I said, no, I'm not reopening, whew, I just, everything changed in that moment. I mean, literally everything changed in that moment.
That's gorgeous.
And, you know, like you say, it's the space. It becomes, like you refer to it as the creative winter. To me, it was the space for creation. You know, to me, it's about allowing something to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, and play around, have fun, try things, you know. I mean, Jesus, I never did a live. I never did a live. I did these conversations. I've been in a few podcasts. I never did a live before the end of March this year.
Yeah.
And I must have 45 of them done at this stage. Just playing. Just playing.
That's amazing. Yeah, I find that as well. It's all about playing. So yeah, and I just wonder if at this point, because I always invite people to share what they've been up to, because you've been creating an amazing kind of podcast based on live series, haven't you, as well? So I guess it's always useful to kind of share that, so I can pop all the links into the member vault for you as well.
Yeah, I'm just starting to fill up the populate YouTube. So you want to, you know, so that just Billy Mann, just you know, put it into, and some of the lives are already up.
Yeah.
So I have about 10 or 12 of them up now, and just when I get time, I load up, you know, a couple of them at a time, and then just load them up. And so I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks they'll all be up there, you know. You know, and I don't really know what's coming next. I started writing the book.
Yes, your book. Yeah.
I started writing my book, you know, and it started this week.
Wow.
Because it's been in here for ages, and I hadn't quite, you know, I'd made 3 or 4 starts of it, you know, and like Simon had given me, he's written a number of books, and he'd given me, you know, a structure, and we discussed it, but nothing connected, nothing felt right. And this week, it just landed with me.
Oh.
And for the, you know, I write, and I just, you know, I'd write a couple of, no, couldn't get it going.
Yeah.
And I think I have the first chapter written now.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it great? Isn't it great?
What's it about?
Isn't it just? You know, I'm not genuinely not facetious here when I say this. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I genuinely don't know.
It's unfolding as well.
It is because I found out with my writing, you know, writing all the posts and longer articles and stuff, that there are times I go, wow, I wrote that. You know what I mean? Like that shit that came out of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know what we're talking about when you're writing stuff, and you kind of go, wow, because in your head you started with this particular idea and you were going to write it, and suddenly you write it, and suddenly starting to kind of go, it's gone off somewhere that you hadn't planned, and you can, and I go on and I'm writing and I'm typing, and I go, gee, that's great. That's the creative process.
When that happens, when you kind of, you write about something that you've had an insight on, and then you forget about it, and then you come back like a year later and you're like, oh, this is an amazing insight, and then you find an article you've written on it already, and you're like, hang on, I already knew that.
I know, yeah. There is a woman that I know, and I've known her for many, many years, and she has a batch of them saved.
Yeah.
Because every now and then she throws up one.
Yeah.
And it could be 4 years ago or 3 years ago, and that has resonated with her. And somehow it's shown up in somewhere, and she puts it up. Yeah. So she's seen the wisdom, and she shows it up, and she puts it back up. And I love that. And I love that. And, you know, and we're back to the word creative again, and the joy of it. Yeah. There are days when I sit down to write something, you know, and we're talking about creative block, which is another thing. Start to write, start to do something. It's genuinely, absolutely 110% to go, that's shite anyway. And start again, you know? Because life is the only do-over that you think you must have. It's just literally just a shift of that. Yeah. It isn't. Look, Okay, I've started this. Oh man, that's not going anywhere anyway. Fuck that. And go back. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Because it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
There are no rules that said now that you have written it or now that you have painted it. Or sometimes what's going to come out is blocked. You know, you've tried to force it out of your system. You didn't force it out of your system. Let it go.
Yeah.
Because I have discovered I have no ownership on it.
Mm. Mm.
I have no ownership on it. And anytime I try to lay ownership on it, it's shite. It's shite.
I love
Because
that.
I kind of forcing it.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it just doesn't. But like, but that's okay. It's okay to get. Well, I wrote a shite one there, or I did that, or because that's being human.
Yeah.
We screw up all the time. Somebody. My kids are killing me if they heard me saying this publicly, but somebody said to me recently, "You must be this, you must be a great dad, and you have all this knowledge." And I said, "Hey, to the outside world, it looks like that, but I'm still dad that walks through the house in his underpants." All right, and that's who they see.
Well, you've left us with a brilliant image now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we near the end? Oh no! Oh no! Damn it! I apologize to everybody that's listening to this. There's bleach available to scrub your eyeballs afterwards. If you can't get that image out of your head, whatever psychological bleach that you have, please apply liberally. But that's the point.
Yeah.
We're beautifully human. There are days I screw up spectacularly.
Mm.
Doesn't make me a bad person.
No.
Doesn't do any of that. It also, there are times I have rows with my teenagers.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that I don't apologize afterwards, because I get lost too.
Yeah.
I get caught up in the story. I get pissed off, Nicole. I do.
Mm.
And anybody that this is and I think this is very important, and I love how you touch this all the time. And any coach that sees this understands this. I don't have all the answers, neither do you,
Mm. Mm.
because it's not possible. Because life is unfolding all of the time, and who we are and how we show up is in the moment all of the time.
Mm.
And
I think
sometimes
having the answers, or thinking we've got the answers, kind of blocks that, really.
exactly. So if a coach says to you, or somebody says to me, "I have got all the answers," it's then or ever you should be really worried, because nobody has all the answers. I mean, unless you're one of the lucky ones that's like Sid Banks or Eckhart Tolle that has had the universal download.
Mm.
They've had the universal download. I haven't. So I kind of got to fumble my way around it at times. And sometimes I got to screw it up, and sometimes it happens. But what's happened is it's got easier
Mm.
and less. Because I'm guided, I feel guided by that I don't have to have the responsibility of it now.
Yeah.
That the answers are presenting themselves.
Mm.
I only have to listen. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all that's asked of me, is to listen and move with it.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, what a wonderful place to end, I would say.
Okay. Wow, that has gone by quickly, hasn't it?
I know, yeah. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no,
And thank you, everybody.
thank you for coming on. It's been a beautiful conversation, and just kind of, yeah, when we had a chat before, it was like this guy's kind of really down to earth and human, and embracing all of the humanness of life, whilst having a lot of fun as well. So and the humor as well. Love the humor. So thank you for joining us. And
My pleasure.
yeah, it's been great. And if you do have any links that you want to share, just let me know, and I'll pop those with the replay.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to find me, Nicole, it's very simple. On Instagram or Facebook, it's Billy Mann Coaching.
Yeah, perfect.
Website under construction, because every time I put it up, I took it down because I felt, because it didn't sit right.
Yeah.
So I just kept it, and I will always say, keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah. Well, I'll put the link up to your Facebook anyway as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody that wants to find me, that's Nicole. That's what they'll find.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just going to do some announcements quickly about the next.
Yeah, please.
If you need to leave, then that's fine.
No, I've I'm fine.
So next Friday, which I think is the 31st of July, I might be wrong, didn't double check that. Same time, we're going to be chatting with the wonderful Rudy and Jules Kennard. So that's going to be a lot of fun, yeah. And they're joining us to explore. Haven't quite decided the topic yet. Actually, we need to send them lots of love because at the moment there's a hurricane heading their way in Hawaii.
Oh, shit.
So we need to think about them and hope that they're all going to be okay. But when I spoke to Jules, she said it was actually quite exciting. They were kind of battening down and
from under the desk.
Yeah. So yeah, holding them in our thoughts. But she said by the time the hurricane's gone, we'll be able to have the conversation next week. So
I love Rudy and Jules. Oh my God, they're every time I you know that I connect with them.
Yeah.
Man.
Fun. And then the week after, we have the wonderful Jamie Wozni here joining us to explore how we can dance as a soul who feels a lot in the world. So talking about kind of being an empath as well. So that'll be another interesting one. Can't wait for those. And just a final invitation, as usual, the next lot of Self-Rediscovery School programs will be starting in October. I'm having a bit of a break because I'm going to be giving birth.
Why is that?
So yeah, the next lot is in October. It's been really beautiful this week, actually, in the exploration of who we really are with the Foundations Group program. So yeah, they keep making me cry. Each group makes me cry. Yeah,
well, I love tears.
Yeah.
Tears of joy, tears of ecstasy, tears of sadness, tears of ecstasy, of orgasm, tears of love. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Tears are just. I said this to a coach this evening. You know, we got very deep and stuff started to move.
Yeah.
And he started to apologize. And I said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
You're leaking it.
Yeah.
I love so powerful, you're leaking it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love tears too. I think
they're great.
But with pregnancy hormones, it was just all a bit much for me. So that's all good fun. So yeah, if anybody's interested in those, just reach out. We can always explore if that's something for you. And yeah, I'll share all your details, Billy, in the member vault area, along with the replay. But thank you again for that beautiful conversation. There's a lot of thank yous in the comments right now. So yeah.
Oh, I loved it. I really, and thank you all for joining us. And I appreciate you listening to me waffle on for however long we've been waffling on the ones for no reason. But it's been a real pleasure, Nicole.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thanks, Billy.
A real pleasure. And you know, and maybe I'll take the liberty of speaking for everybody here right now. Okay. Who and what arrives into the world is beautiful, 10-finger, 10-toed, beautiful baby. Brings all the joy and love, and you'll remember me the moment you get handed that baby. There is nothing. You want it, you know. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I envy you.
Wisdom and love.
It's incredible.
Joy.
It's incredible.
Oh, thanks, Billy. You take care, and thank you to everyone for joining us as well. We'll see you next week. And yeah, thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.